the tools. And exactly how the tools looks like, I will come back to. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. All right, maybe to help you out, MEPs, in terms of like shortening, maybe focus on what you as an MEP, you're going to do in the next 5 years. Concrete action, concrete statement. I mean, you know, give us something. So let's continue with Manon Aubry, French MEP belonging to the left-wing group. First time in the European Parliament. She is a former spokesperson for Oxfam France and has a background in several forms of activism and campaigning. Thank you.
Thanks very much. To be honest, it feels very friendly to be here because most of the time, you know, I'm sitting in the Econ Committee, the Committee on Economic Affairs. Anytime I'm sitting there, I'm the first woman to speak, and then we have, for the hearings, we had to wait for another hour and a half to hear a single woman, not even talking here about young people. And I'm also the chair of the left group, and I'm the youngest chair of a group ever. And you know, I have so many anecdotes of, you know, even the chair of the president of the parliament or other people looking at me like as if I was an assistant. And this is just the daily anecdotes that once once you arrive here and being young, being a woman, coming from the civil society and the NGO world, well, you don't deserve your seats. You need to wear suits to be old and to be around for a while. So I think it's very important that we, you know, girls speak out, that actually we offer the conditions for speaking out. And I can tell you from the inside of the parliament how many times we have to argue about our legitimacy to be here. So it feels good to be surrounded mostly by women. Unfortunately, it remains a women's issue, and maybe we'll have won the battle once it won't be a women issue anymore. And to end, just on concrete proposals and things that we will carry out. I've been working a lot on business and human rights, so companies' responsibilities in their supply chain for human rights violations. That was with my former NGO hat when I was working for Oxfam and other NGOs, and I've been working for some years in sub-Saharan Africa. And I think it has an impact, a twofold impact on women. First is that human rights affect mostly women, because if you look in the big factories in Bangladesh or other countries like this, you have mostly women working there, mostly young women whose rights are not respected. So part of the things we will fight for here in this parliament, but also outside of the parliament, because we're MEP, but we're first and foremost activists, will fight for a directive, EU directive on due diligence to hold companies accountable for human rights violations all across the supply chain. So if a young woman, if her rights are violated back in Bangladesh in a factory, well, she can hold accountable the big company here in Europe. And similarly, we're fighting for a similar framework at the global level, and I'm going to Geneva next week for the UN negotiations on a treaty on business and human rights. And I think those are some very concrete proposals that have an impact on women and hopefully can change at least a little bit this House.
Thank you. I hope you're writing very well, because we're going to really look at you when you talk about this directive. So now, Kira, Danish MEP, belonging to the Green, 21 years old. I mean, you are younger than me. That means I should be there too at some point. Who knows? So, Kira, tell us about you. How you feel about the EU? What do you want to accomplish here?
Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me, first of all. And it's also interesting being 21. I'm also younger than my intern, so I guess it's not just you. But I just quickly wanted to comment on some of the things that the three girls said, and then also a bit on the different things, because I think that Maya had a really important point that we have to change the whole system, that when we see issues in the Econ committee where we had hearings I think it was number 8, that was you, as the first female speaker, this is not just a small issue that we don't have to look at. This is like a structural issue that's surrounding our whole society. So it's really important that we look at the beginning of our lives, as how I also said, that we learn that we have to be small girls and be quiet, and the boys can just go out and climbing in trees, and that also fosters toxic masculinity and some different other issues. So I just wanted to point out that was really important. And I think for me it's really interesting to be here, and I'm a bit sad that I didn't have this forum when I was younger, because I think it's quite important that we support each other. And I remember some of the things that was driven me to run in these elections was one of my female friends from my youth organization. She told me, because there were two males also running for this post, and I was a bit in doubt, could I handle it? Would I be good enough? And how would my campaign be? And she told me that, well, if you want more women in politics, you also have to do something about it. And I think it's important that we remember that not everyone can speak out, but if you have the possibility to speak out, you also have a responsibility of doing it for other people. And then to the concrete policy areas, well, I agree in what Evan and Manu and Irache said, and I think something that's also really important is looking at the abortion rights. And I know that this is a really toxic area in some European countries, but I think it's important that we push forward for this legislation and securing all girls and women the right to their own body. And also when it comes to the access to the labor market, that we look at the maternity leaves, as you mentioned, Wawa, and the different issues contributing to the gender pay gap, so that we close the gender gay pay gap. I think is really important. So that will be some of the things that I will be focusing on, and I am looking forward to hearing what you want us to focus on.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Like it very much. Saskia, we know each other a little bit. You help us. You participate in one of our youth campaign, Diaspora Vote. You are a Belgium MEP belonging to the Green. You used to work for the parliamentary group in the Belgian Parliament on European and international affairs and development cooperation. So tell us a little bit. And gender.
Thank you. I'm really delighted to be here, and especially with my hat of co-chair of the Children's Rights Intergroup. I'm a new MEP, but I know that the Children's Rights Intergroup already supported the previous editions of Girls Speak Out. Today, you give us the opportunity to speak, but also to listen and to commit. I will speak, but I really want also to listen to you. It's hard to talk to you turning the back. Because, yes, women, girls have to speak out, have to take their place in society. And as my colleague said, it's not easy stuff. It's not something that is normal, which is, of course, not normal to fight, to have our own place in society. I think women, also on the political level, but in all levels, have to work together. And you said that it's a good thing that the Commission will be a 50-50 Commission. Of course it is. But when we have women on power, we also expect women to commit in favor of women's rights. And this, unfortunately, might not be the case with all commissioners designate. This being said, I think women here around the table will work together. You mentioned, Manon, the issues of trade. I think there's one big issue we have to fight for is to end children labor. So I'm also in the International Trade Commission. So I will work on this specific issue. There are other issues that the intergroup will work on. It's to end detention of children. All kinds of detention, and also with a special focus on girls, because they face specific problems of violence, sexual harassment, and violence when it comes to migration camps, for example, and detention of migrant children. I think we really have to work with the focus on the superior interest of children and girls when it comes to political work. But also, more than now, to take into account the specific position of children and girls in policy decision-making. in general, citizens don't have enough space to participate in decision making. And this is also the case of young people, children, women, and girls. And I think this is something we should really work on also at the European level, because we could open this assembly, which is supposed to be the citizens' assembly, to the people. And of course, it's what we do today, but we are maps that are committed to it. And I think we also have to work to gender mainstream women's rights, but also children's rights in policies.
Thank you. Thank you, Saskia. You guys did very well. Thank you so much. So now, it's your turn in the audience. Please don't be shy. Please do not be shy. And get straight to the question so that they can straightly answer you. So who wants to start? Raise your hand. All right, go ahead.
Hi. Well, my question was, there's not so many men or boys in this room, like you mentioned. And I want to ask, what do you see as the role of men and boys in the fight for women's rights?
Okay, let's take two and then we'll go. Who else? Yeah.
My question goes directly to the decision makers. How possible is it to engage CSOs from Africa in the implementation of the Gender Action Plan?
Okay, so who wants to start answering? The second question was how you are thinking of engaging with CSO in Africa and obviously also in the European Union. You want to start? Yep.
First of all, just the question of men and boys' role in the struggle for gender equality. I think it's very important. I mean, in the end, the struggle for gender equality is a human rights issue, and it shouldn't only be a struggle that we females are conducting. Of course, we know how the situation is because it affects us, but it's a matter of human rights, and therefore I hope to see more and more men and women, men and boys being engaged in our common struggle. So this is my view on that. And then the second is on the Gender Action Plan. I think we can work with in different ways. One is, for example, now the last weeks we took the decision on the budget for 2020. I myself was a shadow rapporteur, which is it's called. So I was responsible for the budget of the Development Committee for 2020, and I pushed a lot about gender equality, civil society, which I think it's two important components, and that of course applies on all the regions outside the European Union, because the budget was connected to that, and that will be my same struggle when it comes to the GAP3 to push even more for those two perspectives.
Thank you. Kira, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted mostly to comment on your question because I know Saskia knows more about the other things than I do. So I think the role of men and boys are really, really important. And I think it's to bind, like you have to make room for people that are less privileged than you. Both like I need to as a white person to make room for colored people, and men need to make room for girls. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that men have more privilege than women, and they have better possibilities of speaking out and being taken seriously in the fight for human rights. So I think it's a fine balance, but I think it's really important to have allies in different parts of the society.
Anna, and then we're going to go again to the audience, and then you guys will have to...
Yeah, I'm going to be really short, but just comes something to my mind. You know how guys can help a lot? First of all, let girls speak out. Second of all, empower them in order to be able to speak out. That's if you're already just doing that and you're telling to your friends, your guy friends, to do that, we're going to start showing the example. These girls are going to show you how you can also work together.
Okay, Manon.
Yeah. Just a small suggestion in terms of practice that we do, including like in our party, we do like double rounds of speakers. So we have a women and a men's list of speakers, and often, you know, especially in political parties, it's all men speaking, even at the left. So we have a women and a men's list, and we don't let men speak if there's not equal number of people talking. So those are also some of the daily practices that push women to speak, because most of the times women are like, oh, I'm not legitimate to speak. Well, I mean, even if you think it's not a big thing you're saying, you can still say it. And on this, I wanted to apologize because I have to leave the room to go to prepare the plenary, where we have other big battles. And I wanted to apologize because I hate doing this, so I prefer doing it.
But thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing what you're going to do, and we will definitely watch out. Oh, I will. Saskia, you wanted to say something?
Yes, because gender is not only about women, and of course men have to play their role. And for example, take your paternity leave, take time for your children, push in your employment to put women on management positions, empower them, taking the floor, and so on. Yes, of course, men have a role to play. And again, when it comes to policy decision making, I think, and this is to make the link with the second question, we have men, women, to have this gender mainstreaming focus to see which impact policies have on men and women, of course, but also, again, on children. And I think with the backlash we're facing and the decisions of Trump to reduce the funds, notably for NGOs active in Africa, I think the European Union has a really leading role to take in enforcing those UN agencies, the NGOs, the civil society in African but also Latin America and Asian countries, also especially when it comes to health and reproductive health, because this touches particularly women and girls.
Thank you. Thank you, Saskia. Thank you very much. All right, well, I have stretched the time as much as I could, and I can do the split for real, but we need to close this panel, unfortunately, unless you don't want to break. If you don't want to break, then we can have one more round of question and then one picture for me to take away, you know, your beautiful faces. But it doesn't seem like there's questions. Is there questions? You guys are shy. What's happening? All right. Ooh, okay.
Hi, I'm Kaya. I'm a president of a green NGO, and I'm from Croatia. So far, it's so sad to not see any Croatian MEPs here. What my question is, what's your advice to get the message across to those who just don't listen? Because when we advocate, we often reach out to those who have the same feelings and interests. But how do we get the message across to those who just don't want to listen, but are still the decision makers? Thank you.
Go. You had a question.
Well, women and girls represent half of the world's population and therefore also half of its potential. So, however, only half of the women between the age of 25 and 54 are engaged in the labor force, compared to 96% of men. So I want to know which concrete actions you're going to take to ensure that women get engaged in the labor force, but also stay in it after marriage and giving birth.
And then one last question, sorry.
Thank you. So my question is a bit general, because we've been talking a lot about empowerment, but I have yet to hear what actions are going to be taken to empower girls, especially girls in less advantageous situations that don't have access to this information or to know that these things are taking place. So more concretely, I would like to know what actions are we taking as a community or as decision maker and policy makers to advance girls' rights.
All right, you guys have literally 1 minute to answer 3 questions. Go.
Okay, so how to enforce and to make other people listen? I think we have to continue what we're doing today. Look at Greta. There's still work to be done because she's now under threat by also old people reacting because it's a new world, a feminist world opposing an old world, and we have to fight for it. It's all part of the transition to climate, energetic, democratic transition of our society. And women have to take their place. Girls have to take their place and to voice and to have the support of men that are in the same view. Women on the labor market, yes. I think again an example is to have the same parental leave for women and men. To have the same situation on the labor market when it comes to have children. That's one example, and there are other things to be done, but in 1 minute it's hard to develop. To come back to what you said, for example, it's the whole life through that we have to fight against sexism, stereotypes, also when it comes to education, because it's not normal that few girls are in technological and scientific skills, so we have to empower also women when it comes to learning and to have technical skills.
Saskia,
this is
ça
a
fait
huge
déjà plus de 1 minute.
Challenge. Ah, mais t'étais partie. It's a huge challenge also for all the transition of our economy to new economy, circular economy, energy.
Elle répondra à la.
Energy,
She's going to answer she's going to follow other questions.
Okay, I'm going to be a little bit more provocative. I'm going to turn upside down the whole thing, because I believe that if we want to reach out, if we want to work on this issue, it's not only about decision makers and what kind of policy proposals we have or what's going to be pushed through. I really believe that everything starts nowadays from a grassroots way. You have to pressure decision makers, and not necessarily in a way that you are always raising the flag about these issues. You have to figure out what are the topics that they're going to take their attention, and then try to put it towards. So maybe not directly talking about feminist issues, but pinpoint out that every issue has a feminist angle. And also, like you ask,
concrete,
how to reach out to those who are not listened, exactly the same way, especially when you're talking about decision makers and politicians. You have to figure out why they are going to start listening to you. And sometimes, if you are too loud, because even though if you are right about what you are saying, that can be counterproductive. However, if you are doing something that it's amazes them because they're not expecting you to do so, they start to listen. Use the power and not just looking for what is written by law, because believe me, I'm coming from a country by law, a lot of things are right, but they're still not going to follow it up.
I don't like to cut you, but it's just because we don't have time. We're running really late, and there's another panel.
So very short, the first question was, my answer would be advocacy, advocacy, advocacy. That's it. And the second question will be just spontaneously a few concrete examples. One is the access to education, to good education for all. And I think education is also a part of emancipation, a part of being able to fulfill your dream, a part of being able to access the labor market. The second is, as you already raised, for example, paternal leave, to make sure that there are no hinders for the employer to think that if I employ a woman, she might go on a maternal leave in a few months, but if I employ the man, he will not go on a paternal leave. The third is anti-discrimination laws that focuses on gender discrimination. And the fourth would be quota in, among other places, decision-making places, but I would also say within big companies, to make sure that, to show that the examples of women and change the perception that only men could be leading the society.
Thank you. Kira, last word, and then we'll take that beautiful picture.
Yes, thank you. Regarding the actions, I totally agree with what my colleague said. I think, though, it's also important to remember that legislation is one thing, but it's also a cultural thing that we have to change, and that takes time. And as policy makers, we can't do all of it, so some of it also has to come from the bottom, from the society. And then to Kaya's question, I just also wanted to raise that I think some things are just a lost battle, like the right-wing populist and the plus 60 men, some women also. It's just sometimes a battle that we can't win, and I think that doesn't necessarily mean that we then lose, but just that some people are so far away from us that we can't reach them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Give yourself a round of applause. Rise up. We're taking the picture now, right? Okay. So if you rise up, bring out your beautiful smile for me. Everything. My mother always say, a good picture is when people can see your teeth. So I want to see teeth. right? That's what I want to see.
Where are yours?
Oh, I'm just, I don't have any. Oh. Yeah, come. Of course you come into the picture. What are you guys talking about?
Can everybody on the sides move into the center because we can't get you all, so everybody squeeze into the center.
Oh yeah, take.
You all have a sign so you can hold it up as well.
What am I taking? Oh, speak. I like to speak, that's for sure.
It's your job. To make people speak. Out. There. Yeah.
It's nice to be famous.
Wow.
You guys are famous.
So many.
Show your
Paparazzi.
teeth. Show your teeth. They're the
Paparazzi.
best.
Can I get one where you wave them around?
Well, I can wave my hand. All right. Good?
Thank you.
Yeah, c'est dans la boîte? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is everything okay?
Perfect. You're amazing.
All right.
Thank you so much. For the first session, the second session, David Legger says he has to go within now 20 minutes maybe, no matter
Within
what.
20 minutes,
He
yeah.
said, yeah.
You need to leave in 20 minutes?
He said, I can ask him what his best, but he said 40 minutes.
He will.
around-
I'll get him to be the first to speak.
Yes, yes,
Yeah?
yes, just do that. Yeah. Thank you.
It's just because in the first session there were so many MEPs, there were more, so it's,
Yes,
it's
yes,
also
it's okay,
in terms of timing.
Thank you. Sorry for
Thank
not
you
keeping
so
the
much.
time.
No, that's okay. I mean, we started late. Bonjour, ça va? Ça va. Pouvez-vous mettre en bas? Oui, asseyez-vous. Il y a votre nom normalement. Il y a votre nom. All right, everyone. Thunder in our feet. Can you hear it calling? Calling out the dream, and I hope you're ready. Ready for this war. Proving we will not be broken anymore. Il n'y a pas de souci. Ouais, il n'y a pas de souci. Hello. Please take your seat. Can we cut the music? We won't be broken anymore.
Can you feel the times changing? Change is on its way. Buckle.
Can we get the music? Thank you so much. Thank you. Hi. Hi everyone. Yeah, if we can quickly go grab some water and then come back if you need to, but really quickly. Thank you. So we can start. Ah, j'étais là, il manque. Okay. Do you guys want to sit? You can sit. Oh, you're waiting. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. Okay. Can we? They went to the back. Oh, okay. Yeah. So let's wait a couple more seconds.
We have all the 2, 3.
There's 4.
And David Lega is out
Yeah.
for an interview, but he's coming back in.
Yeah, he's coming. It's fine. It's fine because like there's one more speaker before. Okay. Sorry, people had to go to the bathroom, so we'll just wait a bit. Non, moi je parle pas d'âge, il n'y a pas d'âge. C'est bon Ah. C'est bon Oui. Oui. On a... Ça va. Non, 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Oui, c'est 3 minutes. Ben, c'est 3 minutes.
Voilà. Et après, je serai là devant.
Hein? Et après, vous m'arrêtez.
Voilà. Non, mais après, il y a aussi... Il faut savoir
Après,
qu'il y a les questions.
Non, non, mais c'est
Voilà.
3 minutes. Hein?
Voilà.
Je l'ai chronométré. Si j'ai bien chronométré, oui, je m'en tiens au temps en général.
Yeah, I can. Okay. Hi. Okay. Yeah, let's start. Yeah. Let's start. You guys are so good at networking already, so. All right. We're gonna start. Please have a seat. All right. So, we are very lucky today to have somebody from the European External Action Service, Mara Marinaki. She is, since 2015, the first ever European External Action Service Principal Advisor on Gender and on the implementation of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on Women and Peace and Security. So this is a great opportunity. So Mara, tell us what the EU has in plan for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Celine. And I'm grateful to all the great speakers of the first part, because essentially they have set the stage for all of us on how we will take things forward. And of course, it was mentioned time and again that the European Union is a worldwide leader on gender equality. We are proud of this accomplishment. We plan to do even more. We are now at a turning point with a new European Parliament, with a new European Commission, with a new set of minds and commitments from our side in promoting this standing priority, which is to amplify girls' and women's voices in the global movement on gender equality. And we very much believe in the rich and untapped potential of girls and women, and we're committed to invest even more in this potential. We intend to act for girls, to deliver on girls' rights during the European Week on Action for Girls and beyond. And our central themes are girls' rights to education, economic empowerment, girls and young women's participation in decision-making, and how best to focus our efforts on the elimination of all forms of gender-based violence affecting and preventing girls as well as boys, to help them unlock their full potential. So from the side of the European Union, we are absolutely focused on how we need to invest in advocacy, in activism, and in action if we are to see real progress and not regress regarding the girls' and women's efforts to gender equality. And this is an area where we have a very staunch, fresh advocate on our side. It's the incoming High Representative and Vice President Designate, Mr. Josep Borrell, who is also, in his own words, a male champion on women's empowerment. And he has already committed in his hearing of last Monday here at the European Parliament on the paramount importance of women's empowerment. So we feel that he will be leading the way in more than one ways in our common efforts in this regard. Now, it is important also to focus, and I listened very carefully to the exchanges that we have had in our first session, on the needs that need to be taken into due consideration as priorities. More space for girls and how they should participate in a more meaningful way, how we should change the whole system, how we should put forward structural reforms. To put more women in politics, this can make or break any effort. How to speak out on all the shortcomings that women and girls have been facing, stemming from pay gap to opportunities, to women to commit in favor of women's rights, to end child labor, on child harassment, child exploitation, violence against children, and to bring more men and boys into the fray to engage, and, of course, how to engage more women in meaningful ways in the labor force. And to conclude, we must link this to violence, which is the topic of the next forum, because economic and political empowerment of girls and women can represent both a preventive and an exit strategy from the cycle of violence and conflict, and young and female are too much of a good thing, and this might raise violence, and this is counterproductive. I'm all yours.
Thank you very much. Whew. That was very interesting. I hope you guys heard, listened. So now let us listen to our girls, to our champions, to our young advocate. This panel is going to talk about education and regarding gender-based violence. Let's start with Ria. Ria, she's from Kosovo. She is a leader in her country, gender-based violence and discrimination. She told me yesterday a story that really blew my mind, which I couldn't even believe it was still happening. She told me that in Kosovo, teachers still hit kids at school, and that this was totally something normal. So, Ria, talk to us a little bit more.
Yeah, hi everyone. We really worked hard with my group members that consist Mila, Kashish, and Abu. We worked hard to summarize such a broad topic and such an important topic. Gender-based violence and discrimination are triggering phenomena that women are facing every day. And such challenges they face include lack of consent, rape, child marriage, always leading into early pregnancy and deaths, anti-abortion laws, and so many more. And if I were to list these issues young people face every day, it would actually take me a few hours. Youth advocates are doing amazing, great things to end violence against women and girls. We protest, campaign, and have many different petitions. However, we face many challenges when it comes to advocating and reaching decision makers. This is often due to the lack of budget, which should be addressed in the next long-term budget. We are trying our very best, and often in our own personal capacities, to create change, but we simply cannot do it without your help. Key actions we want the EU to carry include encouraging EU member states for the ratification of the Istanbul Convention and EU policies that reflect young people's voices, such as the Gender Action Plan and Gender Equality Strategy. How can the EU help? We know that the EU is a very unique, complex, and important institution, and its help is quite important. We want you guys to create helplines and safe places that are accessible, online and offline for everyone, ensure that there is a trained staff, and ensure that both children and students are educated about gender-based violence, including sexual health education. For example, in Pakistan, there are books available, but they glue the sexual reproduction pages together. They cannot learn from it, and they cannot see it. We also urge you to raise awareness towards decision makers and encourage them to make a revision of national laws and social practices. We want you to train EU delegates on these very issues so that they know where to focus on. Ensure that systems are put in place to monitor the work being carried out on gender-based violence by the EU and highlight those accountable. What we want is actually quite simple. We want the EU to listen to young people's voices in such basic and valid human rights that through written and superficial laws accept equality for everyone. We want EU to be accessible for everyone in every decision-making process. There are many aspects to gender-based violence, so it's time to unglue and read all those pages together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. Thank you. Now, Peace is going to talk to you about education. Did you guys know that 1 in 5 girls of lower secondary school is out of school? Did you know that it starts at 6 years old for a girl to think that she's less intelligent? Peace, she's a 21 years old youth champion from Uganda. Take it there.
Thank you very much. All protocol observed. My name is Peace. I'm from Uganda. I had a great chance to be in school. That's why I've got this opportunity to speak in front of you today. But that's not the case. Many girls in the world still don't attain education because 130 million girls in the world are out of school, and 15 million girls have never been to school. Girls around the world are denied the right to education because of many different challenges. With the other youth advocates of the European Week of Action for Girls, we identify 3 main barriers and their solutions. First of all, in still too many countries around the world, social and cultural norms still exist that reinforce gender stereotypes, preventing girls from attending school, creating a negative cycle that strengthens gender inequality. For example, in the rural Uganda, some communities prefer boys to go to school and girls to stay home for domestic work. And the solution to this problem is that the EU should strongly promote gender equality and fight against gender stereotypes by implementing an ambitious action plan. For example, an action we think it could be effective and implementive through developing a curriculum for teachers, which includes strong attention to gender equality in education. Second barrier is lack of funding for quality education. This is also strongly linked with lack of funding for other key sectors that are necessary to enable girls access education, such as girls' health, including sexual and reproductive health and rights, sanitation, and comprehensive sexuality education. Again, to give an example, lack of funding on sexual and reproductive health and rights can lead a girl to get teenage pregnancy, and that will make her to drop out of school. To solve this problem, the EU should respond to the lack of funding to the key sectors by setting up a long-term financial support to quality education system and the other key sectors that are necessary to enable a girl to attain school. This should be helpful maybe in the next EU long-term budget, which is going to be held soon, so that to achieve this goal. Then the last barrier is we acknowledge that strong political commitments to the right of education exist. But often countries do not take this as a priority. And the implementation of this commitment is very weak. That means the political will is simply not there. So the EU as a solution, the EU as a part of the political dialogue with the partner countries should underline the importance of girls' rights to education. In conclusion, education is a basis of gender equality, including access to political participation, economic empowerment, and fighting gender-based violence. Therefore, education is the key not only to knowledge, but girls' right to education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peace. All right, MEP. I hope you heard well. So what I was saying before in my introduction, but you guys went there, so I'm going to say it again. So today, we need, maybe you guys all can say it together because you heard me, right? So you can say it to them because they went there. So what did I say today is about? About listening, committing. You guys like, let's do this again. What is it? So all together, today is about speaking, listening. Here we go, one more time because I didn't feel it. So today is about speaking, listening, and committing. Thank you. I hope now you heard, right? So let's start with Mr. David Lega. We are so happy to have you here. It's amazing. And what I wanted to say, Mr. Lega is from the Swedish MEP for the Christian Democrats Party. And he used to be a Paralympic swimmer. He's got... But still, broke 14 world records. I'm just breaking records on walking, you know? Yeah, amazing. So this is your first time in the European Parliament. This is our first term. So after hearing Peace and Ria, what can you tell them? What can you commit?
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is such an important event, so I'm really, really happy to be here today. And thank you, Peace and Ria, for sharing as well. And I'm sorry that I have to go a bit earlier today because I didn't have time for this, but I wanted to come, so I pushed it in, the half an hour that was supposed to be. But as co-chair of the Intergroup of Children, I'm really happy to see this joint cooperation between so many parties, so many groups, and you, because we need to raise awareness of this in every way possible, every day. Because it is a well-known fact that girls disproportionately are exposed to physical, sexual, and psychological violence. And we know that girls are a higher degree of a higher degree of victims trafficking and sexual exploitation in Europe and around the world. And we also know that these numbers are significantly higher for girls in conflict-ridden areas as well. So when you read about violence against girls and women women experience in conflict-ridden and emergency areas, it makes me deeply concerned because the figures are staggering. The use of rape as a weapon in conflict and the specific targeting of young girls is actually increasing in 2019 in some parts of the world. Undoubtedly, the damage and distress that it causes families makes it an effective weapon, but at the same time, it is incomprehensibly cruel to do that. So we need to step up action to end the use of rape as a weapon of war and bring those responsible to justice. And to you, Peace, as well, researchers all over the world agree that the best way to increase equality and improve the status of girls and women in society is through education. It goes without saying that that access to education is crucial for girls to reach their full potential. But in some cases, access to school can even be life-saving, as it physically provides them with a safe space. And this, in turn, reduces the risk of them ending up in the hands of traffickers. So it is important to ensure that children in emergency and crisis situations have access to education. And in order to provide a safe space, but also to provide these children with a future. In this context, only a few years out of school can cause a lifetime of distress for young girls. So, can I say one more thing? What we can do?
Yes, go ahead.
And what we actually are currently doing. The EU is investing a lot in development and humanitarian aid. And in this regard, I'm proud to say that it has prioritized education and investment in access to schools in emergencies and crisis. But to fully eradicate violence against women and girls, legislation is not enough. To end violence, we need to work with changing attitudes, social beliefs, and behavioral patterns as well. In this manner, events like this can play a big role in ensuring that we listen to the voices of the young girls and hear what they have to say. For you, I mean, you need to be a part of this to enable us to achieve, to make a change.
Thank you. So that means, like, when you're going to work on policy, you're gonna, consult the girls, right?
We have to.
Okay, that's
It's
good.
the only way to
So you
continue.
heard? Commitment. He's going to consult you every time he's going to have a policy on. So that's good. Commitment. I like it.
And one more thing.
Yes.
Contact us. Don't sit and wait for us. Contact us. And don't tell us you need to listen to us. Tell us what we need to hear.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. So now it's my great pleasure to present Pierrette Esberger Fofana, German MEP for the Green. It's her first term, but she did a PhD on social linguistics with a dissertation that addresses women's literature in Francophone sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you, Pierrette. We'll listen to you.
That's this one, right? So thank you very much to invite me to take part to this event. It's a great event. I am so very happy to be here today and to see all of you here in the European Parliament, making sure that your voices are heard. In fact, it's wonderful to see girls across the world protesting to save the rest of us, most notably from the consequences of the climate crisis. Icons such as Autumn Peltier, Mary Copney, Leah Namugerva, and Greta Thunberg, who speak truth to power fearlessly in an effort to save the environment and our planet. I admire their courage and determination, and I am proud to stand with them and with you here in all your efforts to make the world a better place, not just for girls, but for all of us. On to the topic at hand, for education and against violence. I have been a teacher and an advocate against gender-based violence for many years. I know how incredibly important it is for girls to have an education so as to be able to face the many challenges that they were presented with in this world, and I am aware of how devastating the effects of violence can be for all women and girls that have the misfortune to suffer it. We here in European Parliament must do all that we can do to promote education for girls, both inside and outside of the EU, and we must push to make gender-based violence a thing of the past. As a vice chair of the Development Committee and a substitute member of the FEM Committee, I hope to contribute to effort to increase access to education for girls in the Global South and to push for the EU ratification of the Istanbul Convention. Also, I have worked for many years to advocate for against female genital mutilation, both inside and outside of the European Union. There are no concrete figures as to how many girls have been put through this procedure within the EU, but it is estimated that hundreds of thousands of women in the EU have been subjected to FGM, and many more are at risk. We must do all that we can to raise awareness around the subject and break taboos to empower girls to speak out and parents to understand. In our attempts to improve the lives of girls all over the world, we must start from within.
Thank you, Pierre.
But it is.
You will have the time to respond.
One thing I want to say, because it's on my heart.
Oh,
my door.
If it's on your heart.
It's time, yes, that we EU parliamentarians encourage girls to pursue their dreams, uplift their self-esteem, celebrate their talents, and the door to my office is always open.
Yes. Yes, I like this. I like this. Another commitment. I like it. Your door is always open. That's good. I like that.
You know, I wanted to say it.
I know. So, now, Chrysoula Zakharopoulou, c'est ça? Okay, French MEP belonging to the liberal group Renew Europe. She used to be, or maybe she still is, a gynecologist. Just good. So I'll get your number. She's part of the Parliament delegation to the ACP-EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here. And actually, I'm a gynecologist. I'm an activist on all these sexual and reproductive rights. So if I have to choose the title of my speech today, it will be Education of Periods and Sexual and Reproductive Rights is the key to decrease violence against women. The period is true, it's a natural process and is part of every girl's life. But UNESCO has estimated that 1 in 10 girls in Africa and in all around the world miss school when they have their periods. This is something unusual to see in Europe, but we see in the other countries. So what is the problem? Is that many girls face discrimination and the stigma, the many taboos and myths that menstruation is something dirty and disgust, and they feel shame and fear to say that they have menstruation. And in some countries, we know that women are excluded from many aspects of socio-cultural life. So the problem is that they miss school, and the low girls' knowledge level and understanding of puberty, menstruation, and reproductive health is an obstacle. The second thing that is important, and that many girls don't have access to toilets and sanitary products at school. And this is, for me, when we speak about menstrual hygiene, is not only access to sanitary pads, but also to support the ability to manage their menstruation with dignity. So we can, for example, build some period-safe spaces in schools and make menstrual management also in schools. Third thing very important for me is the sexuality education at school. It is mandatory because we can prevent unwanted pregnancies, abortion, and many other things. because when we speak about violence against a woman, we cannot correlate with the absence of access to sexual and reproductive health rights. And I'd like to finish that education for girls about periods and sexuality is mandatory, so the girls can go to school and get the skills they need to break out of poverty and take control of their own lives. Because no girl should have to miss school because of her period. And just to finish, I just wanted to tell you that the Sustainable Development Goals is the way to achieve a better future for all in order to leave no one behind. I'm here because I don't want to leave no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. So let's finish up this little round of panel with Evelyn Regner, Austrian MEP belonging to the Socialist and SND group. It's her third term in the parliament since 2009. She previously worked for Amnesty International and was head of the Austrian Trade Union Federation in the Brussels office. Thank you.
So, it's already on, so an excellent afternoon. Speaking, listening, committing, and all this together. I think that's an excellent motto. And I would like to thank you for your presentations, because I use this forum today, first of all, to listen. And therefore, I just say directly, thank you very much, Ria, for your presentation. Thank you very much, Peace. When I listened to Ria, I just could say congratulations, because we are covering more or less our work program in the FAM committee of the European Parliament. So somehow when I'm absent, I will ask you to not only to join us, but to present, because that's it. The best protection against violence is exactly what you're doing. To be self-confident, to spit it out, to speak it. To be courageous, because sometimes it needs really a lot of courage to spit out things. Girls, young women, normally don't share that easily, loudly, like here right now in this room. And violence is something nobody likes, and so somehow it's really something which is so strange that it sometimes lets women and girls be ashamed, though being suffering of that. And of course, also to be financially independent. Therefore, what you said was so important, because it's so important when there is violence. Young girls, when they have a chance to education, when they have this chance to be on their own feet, then you simply can also be far stronger against it, and to do that together. So working together is so important. I just would like to raise my thank you to Peace too, because what you mentioned was so important. Simply examples. We need, and therefore I just come directly to what we do in the European Parliament, more women in peace negotiations. When you have more women in peace negotiations, it sounds strange, but then it's also easier to have access to reasonable solutions. More women in so many areas that directly touch violations, that touch raping, and therefore also would like to remind you that we should use all those means of working together in the legislation, in the action, but also in the symbolic politics, and saying that Mr. Mukwege, an excellent doctor, chose 2 years ago as the one winning the Sakharov Prize, because he's the one who is saving the life, who use rapes as a means of war. So exactly this forum right now is so important, that you submit us all your conclusions. And with these words, I simply would remind of Pippi Longstocking. She said, "I've never tried that before, so I think I should definitely be able to do that, whatever it is."
Thank you. All right, that was lots of great commitments coming out. I want more of that, as the audience will be opening now. So who's got a question? I know there's questions. Yeah, go ahead. Straight to the point, eh?
Yeah, I have a question considering the education. We have countries in Africa, yes, where people have already accepted to take the girls to school, but the distance to where the school is an issue. Or the infrastructure of the school is poor, such that when it's raining, the girls or the young people in that school cannot even attend classes. In worst case scenario, you find that motorist drivers, they take advantage of young girls, asking them for their bodies so that they can reach them to school. Are there any interventions that the EU can actually put in place to make that these schools are brought closer to the young people than actually putting them in a situation where they have to compromise some other things to get to school? Yeah, that's my question.
Okay. Go ahead.
Pierre Tesberg Fofana, you mentioned the Istanbul Convention. It's a good opportunity fighting gender-based violence and promote gender equality. How do you intend to support the ratification of the Istanbul Convention at the EU level?
Can I? Oh, well, you all spoke about like a rape in war situation. What about like the laws considered rape in Europe? Sweden just adopted a new law where there has no threats or force to be involved as an act to be considered as rape. In other national laws, there has to be threat or force involved, but many girls freeze, or they are asleep, or they are drunk, or they are out of conscience, and now in all those national laws in the EU, it's not considered as rape. Can you do something about like that more member states implement the Swedish system on rape and consent?
Okay, one more and then they will have to answer.
So as a security studies student, in regards to David Lega's statement, I was wondering what can the European Union do in order to eradicate gender stereotypes and toxic masculinity that leads to sexual violence as a weapon of war? Thank you.
All right. Hey, you've got your guys' work for you. I mean, you asked them to speak, so they are speaking.
Yes.
Who wants to start? You don't have to maybe answer all the question at the, like you maybe, if you can, go ahead. If you, yeah.
I mean, whoever. I think we just.
Yeah, I'd like to.
We can answer then start you.
To answer to the first question about the infrastructures and the distance. This is a true problem, and I have spoken with somebody from World Bank that said the same thing. That means there are money, they have the good infrastructures, but for example, the girls have afraid to take the bus because also violence. I think that it is interesting because we always think about infrastructures, but at the end we have to go local and to see the true problems if we have to give an answer, and maybe to make an investment for, you know, to have some bus and to organize with the government, the local government, something like that, because it doesn't depend everything from European Union, but it could be interesting. And for me, I have to answer to everybody?
No, I think we just share it.
You can guys share the answer.
No. Yeah. So we just do it one after the other, and if there is something that is left, so we just continue. I take this one from concerning the gender stereotypes, because here we can really do quite much at European level. Of course, it's not only the European level, it just have to go hand in hand. I'll just give a couple of examples. Artificial intelligence. Right now, there is so much developed, with algorithms that have been developed by maybe very nice, very kind, very fantastic, white men from a certain background that doesn't take into consideration, that people look differently, that girls also have other horizons. And so somehow we get a very narrow spectrum. And in this regard, we are asked, and in the European Parliament we have already developed a report, the robotics report, that gives advice how to work into these algorithms, that the development is far more really taking into consideration also the girls, men, different backgrounds. And I'll just give you an example, because it's always a question of mainstreaming. There are more people, there are more women and girls dying there's a Swedish example. Maybe there's somebody from Sweden. When there is this, when snow is falling, you just somehow you just have those cars that are cleaning the streets, and somehow it turned out that more girls and women are dying than men are dying when it's snowing, and they just clean the roads. And then, I mean, nobody would ever have asked that. And this is just always the question also, how to do gender mainstreaming and to take on board these stereotypes. It's still like this, that it's more men driving cars, going to the job in the morning, and it's the women and the girls, more girls, of course, boys are also, who are on the pavement. And it turned out, when the snow is cleaned before on the pavement and then on the roads, they just had, after a certain while, less dead women and girls. And somehow when you just have always this way of thinking you apply in the whole legislation, at all questions of daily life, you just can do really a lot. And that's the same with all the stereotypes that are going around in the internet. I mean, you can give hundreds of examples. I stop right now here.
Thank you,
but
Evelyn.
we have the tools here, and we can do something.
About the convention Istanbul, we asked the commissioner to do everything so that all countries, European countries, ratify the Istanbul Convention. That's the first problem. For example, Germany ratified the Istanbul Convention last year. It's very late, yeah, and that's our target. Now I want to answer that because it's a problem I know personally with girls who don't go to school, and I support schools in my country, in my home country, in Senegal, and I work with the church. And we make something for that girl because it's a big problem, what we say. Nobody can understand that in Europe because you say, oh no, it's no problem. But you have to go buy food, and sometimes it happens what you say. And at the school I am supporting financially bought a bus to take all the children, and each time a woman, a teacher is on the side. Maybe we are all together, we are all in fan. It's something we can make an amendment or write something to push the countries, yes? Because the government, at least the Senegalese government and the African government, are not aware of that problem. Yes? Nobody is aware that when girls are going to school in the morning, they might be raped, they might be beaten, yeah? All these things. And I think it will be, for me, although I listen to that, I am going to try to do something with my colleague so that we can make it, because I am in the days committee, yes, that's the development. Thank you for this idea to expand it in all African countries, and to say that when we are going to Nairobi, I am going to say that take care, yes, because it's something, how you said, infrastructure, we just think, oh, we need roads and so on, but nobody think about the girls who are in the morning or the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you guys ready for another round?
There is one question that is open.
Which one? Okay.
Which
one? Okay.
Yes.
You're going to answer.
There is this question open concerning the new definition of rape in Sweden, as it is done. I just can tell the following thing. I know what in Sweden was done, and I think it's absolutely worth to dig deeper. Of course, this is a national legislation that also caused a lot of debate in Sweden as well. And I think it is worth to dig here deeper. I'd love that we have that all over Europe, but I really would also like to be quite, how should I say, realistic. When we have countries, and I don't mention them right now, but you were just referring to the Istanbul Convention, who still regard it as something, it's okay, when you hit your wife, it's just the wife or something. I mean, that there are really still in some countries pictures and images of women existing. We really have to fight, and we're fighting for that. That is very, very difficult to push a very progressive legislation on how you define rape. I think it's worth, and I say really thank you very much that you raised the issue.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we're gonna do one. I'm gonna take 3 questions because we need to wrap up. We're like extending this conversation. Great conversation. So one more round. I'm gonna take 3. Okay? Yes.
Hello, thanks. My name is Abu from Ethiopia. The problem I have noticed is an area support use information network and share and exchange best practice. The problem that exists for youth association, I lack of funding, which result in our messages not being heard. How can the EU support youth association like mine gain more visibility and influence? Thank you.
Because the MEPs have plenary. Sorry, go ahead.
My question goes directly to Fofana. Can you hear me? Okay. Considering that I don't see as young people engaging with the end of GM cause, as I would like to see, what is your perspective about the importance of young people engaging with this cause, and what is your advice for them?
Yep.
For young people engaging with the cause of end of GM.
Okay, you get to answer, and then we can let you guys go, because they have plenary. They have to get to work, to all those commitments they give you, you know? So there was one question on youth organization, providing youth organization with more visibility and more support. And then another one on end of GM, youth interaction with this issue.
Yes. I will answer to you. I didn't hear your name. So this morning we were speaking with Bill Gates Foundation, and we were speaking about that the key is a woman and the youth. And absolutely, the European continent has many things to learn because we are very old, like continent, and also the population is older and older. But in Africa, we have very young population. So this is very interesting also for the exchange between Europe and Africa. And the thing that missed is the visibility, because there are many active people. And we will go, for example, to Rwanda with the ACP delegation, and I'm very happy because we propose to have a meeting with all the youth and to exchange with them, and we want to know which are their expectations and how we can make them to try to have collaboration between the European youth and African youth, and like Erasmus Plus, it's something that can be useful.
I'm quick because we have in exactly 1 minute our plenary, end of FGM, to make it a topic again and again and again, and to work very closely with religious organizations that are reasonable. We can cooperate because here we saw in practice we could move on, most.
In Europe, there are many countries that we have people that they make the tourism. I speak like gynecologist, I have many patients that they are afraid to go back to Africa because they say, I don't want to just, because I know that it is a risk for me. So we have to stop also to fight against this.
So most of the countries in Africa, and from the 29 countries where they make FGM, 24 have a law. But a law is a thing, yes? And to implement the law is another thing. According to my experience in many countries in West Africa, where I am coming from, and my association Forward Germany that we make in Germany, as the name, more than 30 years now, we work together and we try to explain the problems. If I come and somebody say your culture is bad, something and so on, nobody is going to listen to you in Africa. But if you try to explain what is the consequences, yes, you may have if you will be cut, how we say it, I think we got a lot of success, for example, in Senegal, but also in a country like Guinea, where most of the women are cutting. Yes. And for Europe, it's much easier to work together, but what the big problem in Europe, I think, at least in Germany, that the association don't work together, and everybody is started again, and start again doesn't help. Because you have the women now, for example, in Germany, we have, with the migration, a lot of women who came, and when they came in Germany, most of the doctors didn't know what is FGM. Yes, and take all the students, come and look at. Yes, and it was terrible, and we had to explain, no, it was something they have made in their country, and now they are here, and we have to help them. And I think if you can, I don't know, here you are living in Belgium, and FGM, you can, okay.
I know you guys have to go, so before you go, I want everyone to just clap and raise your hand and applaud for the MEPs, yes? Thank you. No.
Mais c'est je crois que c'est la plénière des socialistes, c'est pas la plénière.
Non, parce que
c'est vrai, c'est vrai. Oh.
See, I'm keeping them into work.
Very sad that I have to go because I was a teacher and I like to be with you. Good.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, huh? But you have always to run away.
All right. So our little journey, our little time is coming closer to an end. But before that, let us hear from Chiara Adamo from the European Commission. She's been here listening. Yeah, and then maybe she's going to commit now. And so she's going to tell us about what the EU can do in this new term that is going to start soon. And maybe. and yes, so go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, let me commend you for this initiative. After years in the Parliament meetings and conferences, I rarely see so many MEPs attending a side event, so congratulations. I'm conscious I'm almost the last speaker, so I will just give you 3 main takeaways from what I listened and heard today. And also, I will tell you 3 stories of girls like you to exemplify what the EU can do and is doing, and also trying to address some of your questions during these 2 hours. So, the 3 takeaways. The first, girls like yourselves are powerful agents of changes. We are not speaking here about a passive subject, about victims or survivors. We are speaking about agents of change. And this means that we need to take you into account and your views into account in policy and project design, among other things. So that's I wanted to just flag is one of the key principles of the EU rights-based approach to development aid, consultations of the concerned groups, including girls and women organizations, particularly in the issues which concern them directly, simply because you have the answers, and you will see you had the answers when I go into solutions. Second principle, we need to take a girl-centered approach. Many said it, the MEPs mention it. What does it mean to take a holistic approach? It's not a bureaucratic term. It needs to understand that in order to be effective and change the reality for girls, we need to stop working in silo and addressing girls' education on one hand, sexual reproductive health and rights on the other, and economic empowerment as a separate thing. It's all indeed interconnected and requires us to work together in good cooperation, and this also includes the programming. That's also why in the Gender Action Plan I had the pleasure to be responsible for, we did commit to mainstream gender in all programming sectors, be it transport, infrastructure, agriculture, connectivity, you name it. So we are obliging our colleagues to produce a gender analysis of each and every program they are proposing for approval. And I think this is going to continue and to be even more systematized with the next commissioners. You heard probably also the hearing of our Commissioner Urpilainen, and she's going to be strong on that. Third, you said, it was MEP Inzia who said we should strive to leave no girl behind. And that's the third point, and you also started with that. We need to go not only for the low-hanging fruit, but we really need to address those who are more at risk of being left behind because of the intersectionality. We have multiple identities. We are not only girls. We are girls of a certain color, with a certain sexual orientation, of a certain religion. I mean, these should not be a side thing in the design of our policy, and this is what we committed in order to get to the Agenda 2030 implementation, the SDGs, and the EU is firm on that, as we reiterated in the Consensus for Development. So now, 3 small stories, and I'll finish. First, you mentioned Malala. Malala's right to education, girls' education, one pen, one girl. Well, she has been changing the world, that's in some respect. Girls' education has been improvement. There has been progress. This is an area where there has been progress, particularly on primary schools. But as it was said, like from Peace, this progress is very uneven. It's not everywhere. You need to look at different situations, conflict, emergencies, but also if you look at secondary school or quality education, we're absolutely not there. You also have to think that 1 in 3 girls who marry before 18-year-old, and this often results in dropouts. So indeed, in terms of the approach to our funding, 70% of what we do is in education, in development, is geared toward gender-sensitive programs which directly look into the girl's perspective, the gender perspective, to make sure that the book is not glued. Indeed, the programs is not only about providing the infrastructure of the school, is also to making sure that we train the teachers, we empower the teachers as a role model, we talk to the parents and the boys education at early stage of primary schools to change stereotypes and attitude. Second story, very short, because we are in the European Parliament, the Restorers.
That will be the last story.
Yeah, okay, the last story. The Restorers, 5 Kenyan girls, you might have heard about yesterday. They were just nominated for the Sakharov Prize from the European Parliament this year. And they came up with the app. The app is called ICAT, and it is to help girls like them who are at risk or are suffering from female genital mutilation. You were talking about digital skills and digital empowerment. For girls, digital can be a threat. Hate speech was mentioned. But it's also such an incredible tool. And indeed, digital empowerment of women, including economic empowerment of women in the digital sector, is something we are prioritizing both internally and outside the EU, also in cooperation with private companies, IT companies, and international banks. And last, Jaha Doucouré from the Gambia, 24-year-old activist who simply built boys and girls movement, a youth movement. Went there, she was herself a survivor of child marriage and FGM, talked to the traditional leaders, talked to the political leaders, law has changed, she made the change. So it's up to you to make the change, we are there to support. She is one of the champions of our flagship initiative, which is called the Spotlight Initiative to End Violence Against Women and Girls, where indeed we work on changing social norms, including empowering women's movement like the one of Jaha. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chiara. I know it's a great exercise, right? So as we come closer to say goodbye, I would like to give the space and the voice to Sibe, 21 years old, Belgium, and language guru. When I looked at his bio, I was like, damn, like 7 languages, like seriously? Like, how did you do it? And what did you take from today? What do you want us to remember and to commit to?
Okay, so today, myself and Driven Youth Advocates spoke out on 4 major target points. The first one being political participation, the second one economic empowerment, then education, and also violence against girls. All the talking points and proposed solutions are aspects that people in charge here at the heart of democracy must consider when voting on, for example, the next long-term EU budget. This means that they need to ensure that safe spaces for political involvement for girls are created, that more young female professionals are working in the labor force thanks to creating safe and accessible environments, long-term quality education, and also, last but not least, sexual education and safe spaces for vulnerable girls and women. Now, I, as a male and a proud feminist advocate, I would also like to highlight that we all need to be involved when you take these decisions. We need to involve everyone in the world to achieve gender equality. I would like to thank the fact that it has been highlighted that men should be involved as well. Although I would like to raise the awareness that there are only 4 males in the Gender Equality Committee here in the Parliament, and that the organization of this event informed me that it was very difficult to find a male MEP to come here today. But it is important to involve everyone. From my personal experience, I can speak that sexual and any other minorities face the same discriminatory issues all over the world. They are victims of systematic political, socioeconomic, and cultural biases. Achieving gender equality is not just a matter of adding more women, but people need to recognize the diversity of everyone and do not identify someone with one specific label, which is called intersectionality, as Chiara Adamo pointed so nicely out. You have all different backgrounds, and you need to open up spaces to speak up to these people of different backgrounds as well. That's why we need to put young role models forward. As Irache Garcia Perez pointed out, any type of discrimination in one area affects progress in another one. That's why we need to keep on advocating and asking the gender equal representation, visibility, and diversification that we deserve. It is a fight in which the European Parliament needs to take a leading role in each of its decision-making processes so that none in and outside Europe is left behind, because none of us are equal until all of us are equal.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This concludes Girls Speak Out in the European Parliament. And I want you guys to give you guys a really big round of applause. You did very well. Say goodbye to our friends that are live watching us, so tell them goodbye. See you soon. And then we'll take a picture, right? And then we can all go, and then you can mingle and network, because I see you guys like to mingle and networking. Yeah. Yeah, one more picture before you guys leave. One more picture.
Can you
At some point, you were getting late.